Adam Watson began his Kentucky public education career in 2005 as a high school English teacher. Currently, he's a digital learning consultant for a regional educational cooperative that serves over 150,000 students. Adam writes articles and book contributions and is a frequent presenter, panelist, and keynote addresser for regional and national conferences such as Gen Con, Gamma Expo, and Serious Play Conference. In 2022, Adam launched Kentucky Educators for Role-Playing Games. You can find him at kedrpg.com, integrating his lifelong passion for tabletop RPGs into his educational advocacy work. His book, Tabletop Role-Playing Games in the Classroom, Infusing Gameplay into K-12 Instruction, was published by McFarlane & Co. in 2025. An accomplished author, a nerd in our own hearts, and also a man right here on the show with us, sitting down today to talk about that book and his history as a nerd and everything in between, tabletop RPGs, and his love for all things dice, dragons, and education. We have Adam Watson. How you doing, Adam?
Hello. That's such a great introduction. I think we just need to stop right here.
Yeah.
That's as good as it's ever going to get. Let's just stop.
Yeah.
There's no topping it. So.
Who wrote that introduction, Adam?
I may have helped. A few people have asked for bios. I've always had one in the pocket. So yeah.
Read that off the biography, Adam.
Absolutely.
It's good. Absolutely. But all true, right? Everything in it true, no embellishment.
I think 98.9%. I think. Yeah. No, it's true. It's all true.
Now, we left out the part where Gary Gygax stole his initial ideas for AD&D from you.
That would have been interesting because that would have happened pre-fetus, actually.
And
that timeline would have looked like. Yeah.
That is how accomplished a man you are, Adam.
That's true.
It really is.
Well,
don't play it down.
That's true. That's true.
So
I'm like Paul Atreides' sister. You know, the water life came in.
Yeah.
My eyes turned blue, and I came up with D&D in utero. Yeah.
All right. So welcome to episode 34 of The Hills Have Nerds, the only podcast that wouldn't fall asleep in class if you just make it more interesting. Maybe add some dice. Today, you got me, Josh, you got Lee, and you have a special guest, Adam Watson. Adam, you would you like to introduce yourself? What brings you to the round table of nerddom, if anybody skipped past the intro there?
Oh, my gosh. Well, first off, let me just say thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
I'm a late fan. Only recently discovered the delights to be had in the hills of the nerddom that you all run and have podcasts for. But thank you for having me.
Many delights to be had here on the
There are many delights. Many delights to be mined and found in in them there hills. So yeah, well, I will tell you that maybe as one part of the introduction, I can say the first time we laid actual eyes upon each other, the three of us in a room, was you were kind enough not only to come to a Hazard, Kentucky professional development facilitated session that myself and my colleague, Callie Colley, who is from the Kentucky Department of Education, we facilitated what we call the Dungeons and Desk. It's a series. It's a regional series. We've been traveling around Kentucky, having various sessions, talking about how can you use tabletop role-playing games in education. And Hazard was stop number 4. We're basically halfway through a journey because every stop in this journey is through an educational cooperative. I work at an educational cooperative. Mine is called OVEC, the Ohio Valley Educational Cooperative, which is around Louisville up north. And so anyway, we're coming in a circuit. You all were kind enough not only to come, but it's also fair to say that thanks to your friends and connections, you did some delightful things. First off, you spoke to our teachers and educators that were there, which was delightful. Thank you. And then you also brought some wonderful donations. Thanks again to connections and stores that you have around this Eastern Kentucky area. So
shout out to the gaming company in Pikeville and Page 3 Game Zone in Pikeville. We're kind enough to send some stuff down with us when Lee and I went up and spoke at that, and that was a great time. We had a blast. I had fun. I had fun speaking. I don't know if people had fun listening to me, but I had fun speaking.
They did. If you timed all the laughs, if nothing else, yes, they enjoyed. Not laughing at you like, look at that poor guy talking. It wasn't that kind of laugh.
That's fine.
It was ha ha ho ho he. This is entertaining kind of laugh.
You don't know me well, Adam, but there's no such thing as negative attention for me. I don't agree.
That's fair. That's fair. It's just like there's no such thing as bad publicity, right?
Yeah,
Publicity is publicity.
okay.
Yeah. So it was that was a opportunity for us to meet each other, which led to this moment here. But kind of telescoping backwards from that, yes, I am a person that I feel like I was born ready to be a nerd. Um, I was born in 1974, and the other reason I'm so explicit about naming that out loud and proud is that I often say, I say in my book, and I say in sessions often that the reason I knew D&D and I were meant to be some kind of siblings, at least some psychic connection, if nothing else, is that Gary Gygax, had come up with his idea before I was born. To be fair, we just established that. He was boxing his first 1,000 boxes of D&D at Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, in the basement in his home there. First 1,000 boxes in January of 1974, starting to ship them out. And I shipped out in February of 1974. That's when I was born. So we're just that close, just a few weeks difference between me and the birth of D&D.
It was meant to be. There could not be Adam Watson until D&D entered the zeitgeist.
That's fair.
And there could not have been Adam Watson, and thus the
true.
birth of D&D birthed Adam Watson.
I think somewhere in the spirit of the sky, yes, there was some kind of lining up of those moments. The spell components were there. And so, I was born, jumped around a lot. My dad was in the Air Force. I was born in Cocoa, Indiana when I was about a year old, not even that. Around that, we moved to Las Vegas, Nevada. And that's where my first memories were. First of all, just being out there in a house off of base with the desert behind me. It was an impressive thing. You're a young child and you see an endless desert. It's kind of, it gives you imagination and such. The first big nerddom moment, though, that I'd probably say that infused me, inspired me, became a part of my soul, was I was 4 years old. And the timing of this is important. It was not when the Star Wars movie was first released. And the only reason I know this is because I had to have been 4. It had to be 1978 because, and it's some kind of re-release at a drive-in theater. They were running it. And I went with my parents and we watched Star Wars in a drive-in theater. And at the end of the first time around, my parents gave me an action figure, a Star Wars action figure, which wouldn't have been out in the first few months after the first, when Star Wars was originally released. That's the only reason I know my chronology of my memory has to be that. So, and then we went at least another time because I got 2 action figures out of it. And I was totally blown away. Like that, as it is, it's an old story, I suppose, almost to a trope. But, to see Star Wars, eventually Star Wars A New Hope as it was branded, and to see the imagination, the adventure, and I didn't know things like Joseph Campbell's Hero's Adventure and those kind of things, the monomyth. I didn't know things like that at the time. I just knew there was something primal about that, and it just blew me away. I was like, I love this. I love sci-fi and fantasy, and quickly dived into all of those realms. And I was an avid and early reader, and that TV, of course, back when there was only 3 channels. I mean, I'm an old guy. That
no, wait,
movies.
Yeah, like the end of the broadcast. Now we conclude our broadcast day, Eric. I don't think you're that old, right?
I am.
With the flag flying. Now we conclude our broadcast. Yeah.
Listen.
Okay.
All right. I remember in the 80s the thought that, hang on a second, for only $98 you can buy a VHS, this beautiful precious piece of plastic, or rent it for $5. But. And put it in a thing called a VCR and play a movie. And you could watch it. You could start it all over again. You could stop it. You could pause it. I mean, right? Anyway, so that kind of became my world. That kind of became my world of nerddom, of pop culture, of fandom. Still a huge Star Wars fan. I don't read as many comic books nowadays as I did in the past, but certainly that was part of my DNA as well. So shout out to Marvel and DC and all the friends there. So yeah, that was the thing I was brining in, to use a little. It's just became Thanksgiving for those that don't know the recording date here. So yeah, I was stewing in all those juices marinating for quite a while, and that is when this wonderful moment happened in the mid '80s when I had a cousin who was the cousin that introduced a lot of interesting and wonderful things to me. I'd never heard of Led Zeppelin until the cousin's like, you got to listen to this band. And I was like, mind blown. Authors like Arthur C. Clarke and people like that. It's like, hey, you like reading sci-fi? Take a load of this. And one day, this cousin said, I know you like science fiction, and I like these things called tabletop role-playing games. And I was like, what does that mean? What's a tabletop role-playing game, you know? Well, let's just play it. So he broke out this box set of Star Frontiers, probably the first edition of that, which was one of the moments when TSR was expanding beyond D&D and really starting to make inroads into lots of different releases. Anyway, I fell in love with that. I thought that was so fun. And then from there, it was the gateway game, right? So from Star Frontiers, I did eventually double back and play some D&D back when it was really the first edition, or the only edition. And then, quite a few other games other than that. So that became kind of another inciting moment, which was the moment of what tabletop role-playing games felt like. And it was wonderful, is wonderful. There was a big gap between a period of playing those games for several years and kind of returning to them as a player, which only happened in the last 3 years post-pandemic. But it was a seminal moment, and it's definitely something that I won't forget and haven't forgotten. It infused me.
I think it's a key point in every tabletop nerd's life when they play for the first time. Like no matter how old you were, I think you hold on to that and remember that when you realize when it finally clicks and goes from I'm staring at paper and dice to, oh, okay, I see what this actually can be. Like at first you think, and it's a little daunting sometimes, especially if you're younger. Younger kids I think can do better with the imagination side of it, and we'll get into what your thoughts on the tabletop stuff is. But like just the first time that clicks, the first time you play and you feel yourself getting into character, everybody remembers what they were playing and where they were. It's just a great feeling. So you got into tabletop role play, you got into those games, and that has been a big part of your life. It seems like it still is a big part of your life, right?
It was, but it was repressed isn't quite the right word. It wasn't like someone said, stop that. But I think, again, this is a very common story when people talk, I think, about their experiences from youth to adulthood. There's some moment, like I played when I was 9 or 12 or maybe even 13, 14, etc. But somewhere in that late middle school going into high school, there's a moment where it's like life intervenes, other things attract your attention. And so, and it was as much about, other interests being pulled away or pulling me away from tabletop role-playing games as, again, the classic trope. It's like the thing about why video games are such a wonderful, sustainable system from birth to now is that, yes, there's multiplayer and those are fun and all that, but there's so many video games you just play and you can be alone. Like you don't need to call up 7 friends. And that is the unique and what I think beautiful thing about a typical tabletop role-playing game. Even if nowadays you have the experience online, you need at least a couple of friends, or at least 2, I suppose, right? A game master and yourself. Obviously much better if you have a handful. But with that comes commitment and scheduling. The number one monster of role-playing games to conquer. That idea of, Tuesday at 8 is good for me. No, how about Wednesday? How about Saturday morning? Can't, got a kid's baseball game. I mean, all the things that happen, life, responsibilities.
It's the main boss of the role-playing campaign is
1,000%. So anyway, it drifted away from me, but the experience stayed with me. I loved the imagination. I loved the feeling of that co-created story. And I often roll that out when people say, what is a tabletop role-playing game? And, if I have 7.7 seconds, I say, it's a co-created story with fun dice. There you go. Like that's basically in a nutshell, what a tabletop role-playing game is. And that co-created story is it's that indefinable quality that just really makes it pretty amazing. I know that we have technology now, a world with AI. We're approaching levels of, an instant feedback system where I throw anything at something and something might be able to interact back. And yet, I'll say thankfully, it's just not quite the same and can't match the human-centeredness of people coming around a table and telling a story and enjoying themselves. As much about the social aspect of it is as it is about whether you roll a nat 20 or not. So So this would probably be a good segue to say, as life intervened and things happened, and adult Adam comes into the picture. One of the things I knew early on is that I really wanted to teach. I felt really good when I helped other people. I did really well in school, at least in the traditional sense of like the grades and knowing, the efforts to put in. Bottom line is, I said, hey, this is the career. It took a while because through a series of circumstances, and to skip a little bit, cutting to the chase, I ended up going to school part-time while I worked full-time. And so it basically ate up my 20s just trying to get my BA. So I was 31 by the time I actually started teaching. And I started as a high school English teacher. And so as a high school English teacher, I'm doing that. One of my classes that I really loved to do, an elective class called Myth and Legends. So some things start creeping back into the picture. Good old Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey, the monomyth, showing, all through different mythology, the threads that are all these things connected. But along that time, I started experimenting a little bit with the idea of TTRPG experiences, or at least elements is what I would probably call them later in my book when we get there and I talk about frameworks and such, an element of TTRPGs. So some of it would be theming, some of it may be aspects like simulations would be maybe a better word, but if I had thrown some dice in there, it would have been a TTRPG. We did a thing where we were doing Lord of the Flies. We were reading that book, about to read it. And I did a thing where the kids came in. Now you have to understand the technology. This is, 15 years ago. So I had a screen. And
basically Stone Age. I mean,
yes, that's right. Better than an overhead projector.
Animating flip books for these children at that point, 15 years ago.
Right. Yeah. Actually, we just lit a fire in the cave, and I did
shadows. Just shadow puppets.
Like elephant,
and it also pleases the gods for that performance, so that's good. Ensures a fine harvest. So you're a damn good educator, Adam.
The bones say yes. The bones say
damn good educator. Right.
So anyway, we I had a projector showing kind of a default scene of like an airport, and there was audio that I was playing through a MP3 file or whatever of like ambient airport noise. And as kids were walking in that day, I was handing them this little paper ticket. Oh, you're in B3. And then I showed the screen had a little seating chart. And so that they noticed that the seats were in different, the desks were moved in a different way. They sit down. Last one comes in. I sealed the cockpit door. Go up to the front. I put a little Krispy Kreme hat on, and then I became flight attendant Adam. Hit another file, MP3 file. Now it's pilot Adam that you're hearing, but flight attendant Adam is doing the, there are 3 exits in the front and the back and all that stuff. We take off. It's a beautiful day flying. You can look down to your left through the cockpit, through the window. You can see the island below. Oh, hang on a second. And then there's an alarm that goes off. Mayday, mayday. The plane crashes. I turn the lights out, turn them back on. I say, okay, well, if you look on your ticket, it tells you which group. You're in group A, B, C, D, or whatever. We went outside. And in the groups, they only had what they could carry. And once they got outside, they got a little packet realizing, okay, you crashed, but you only have what you have on you, literally. So a pencil, great. That could be a supply or a tool and so on. And what would you do and what rules would you make? And it was just kind of a good preface to the story of Lord of the Rings and some of the themes of the book.
Lord of the Flies?
Lord of the Flies, yes. Not Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Flies. So Lord of the Flies. And so in the themes of that, we emerged out of that. It was a nice little setup, but it had that game aspect, right? Like we were pretending to be the roles of survivors and so on. And I did a few other things like that. So it stayed with me. Then time goes on, and I had a district position that I walked into a classroom of someone, and they had a learning management system platform called Classcraft, and it no longer does what I'm about to describe, but it was kind of a fantasy tabletop role-playing game themed experience where you're a healer, you're a warrior, you're whatever, and you get points and random things happen. And if you get, you lose some hit points, then the healer has to help you. And it was kind of what we call a PBIS system. It was a positive behavior intervention and support system of rewarding people for doing the right thing. And he did that alongside the projects and stuff they did in the class. And I was like, God, this is like a tabletop role-playing game. So time goes on. And then moving to more recent times, it was really just like, I feel like there's something here. I feel like there are people that you can do things like this in classrooms. And I, as my colleague Callie says in her version of her doing a similar experience, she did some of this in her own classroom recently, right before she joined KDE. It wasn't that she or I felt like, well, I'm the only one that ever came up with the idea, but where are they? And is there evidence and research that this could impact learning in a good way? So I started looking and finding those articles, and then it was like I need to put them somewhere, and that's where I launched Kentucky Educators for Role Playing Games, kyedrpg.com, as just a repository. Really, it was just like as I found a cool article or a digital tool that kind of, hey, this could, has a tabletop role playing game feel, but I could also see it for an educational purpose. It was a place to put stuff. And as I did more and more of that, I realized, man, I've done a lot of work and a lot of research. I wonder if I could put this together and formulate something. And that really was the beginning that eventually became the publication of my book. And in the journey, it's what I call the blue Honda experience. Like, if you own a blue Honda, all you see is blue Hondas. Like, hey, there's a blue Honda. Like, oh, hey, look at another blue Honda. It's funny. They have a blue Honda just like me. So once I started really looking and people started knowing about my journey and the KY at RPG experience, and oh, you got to talk to so and so. Oh my gosh, Dungeons and Dragons, or oh my gosh, this. I think I have a friend down the hallway that does something. Oh, tell me more, and I'd email them and hear their wonderful story and try to celebrate it in a blog entry or on the website. So that's where a lot of that, just by word of mouth, really an effort. The most fun part about this really has been that although I do have some people outside of the bluegrass that I found or researched or even talked to, it's the idea that down, up the highway or down the hallway, right? There's something really valid that in Kentucky, we have quite a few people that have done some really amazing parts and of their learning experience with tabletop role playing games.
The hills have nerds, man. We say it
That's
all
right.
the time. The hills have nerds, right?
So sorry that was long winded, but that
No,
the
that's
journey
great.
in the arc at least. Yeah.
That's great. I have a question. So
Ask away.
did you? So you said you began, finding people that were doing similar things or were using tabletop role playing games or the idea of the tabletop RPG, the framework in in the classroom, and you said you had the blog where you would celebrate that, you would talk about them and that. Did you find that you were kind of the first person doing this? I mean, were there other people that were like pioneering this along with you, or have you found that this whole I don't know, not necessarily anthologizing, but just combining this and pulling it up and trying to push this idea into the mainstream? Is this something you found that you've been spearheading, or?
I wouldn't try to claim credit to be the first, and I wouldn't say it's a lone journey either. I would just say that at best, hopefully, I have joined a front line of other individuals. So to put that in perspective, there's a gentleman named Cade C. Wells. He is a middle school English teacher. He's currently in South Dakota. And that was a name that came up early and often in different things, videos or webinars I would watch, or an article here and there. And that was just by the repetition of that name, like this is a person. That's one of the early examples of like, this is a teacher that's really doubled down on this experience. And what was also fascinating about Cade's story, I don't know him personally, I've never met him, but Cade Wells, what's really awesome is he's a middle school English teacher, and he was all in. I mean, again, I talk in my book about a framework of infusion, about how deep are you going to go with this experience. And excuse me, Cade was all in the sense that he starts the class, the 9-month course of middle school English 7 or whatever, with a rolling up of a character. They play D&D every Friday. He early on gets student DMs kind of up and going, and so that they can you can divide and conquer that room, because that's 30 kiddos, right? And they use that for all of their ELA standards, all the writing of narratives and so on. And that was great as an example of, if someone can do that full on, soup to nuts, as they say, then certainly if you just wanted to play a tabletop role-playing game for a few days, or even just an element, not even a full game, there's opportunities. If this person can do the full course, then there are options. And along those lines, as I started walking around and talking to people and through email and in person when I could, I started finding a camaraderie of that. So it's just the thing of people on little islands, even with the internet, obviously that has helped tremendously. It certainly helped me, but it's not exactly a typical pedagogy. It's not like, game-based learning is pretty good. And a lot of people talking about how bringing video games to a classroom or esports, there's that. But tabletop role-playing games, also, I think part of the making it kind of underground is that it was only really in the last several years that it's broke. I mean, things like Stranger Things can't be underestimated as far as like people are like, oh, D&D, yeah, that game that the kids play in Stranger Things. They may not know anything about the history of TTRPGs or any other TTRPG, but my goodness, they know Dungeons and Dragons, right? But that's a pop culture, the movie that came out in 2023. That's a level of like general pop culture knowledge about D&D, but you don't have to go back that many years. Even though 5th edition really changed the game for Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons as a product for sure, but that still was among us, right? Oh yeah, but that was the 5th edition, and there are people that are only just now in the last few years, finding out about and experiencing it. So it has a level of play and knowledge, and therefore tabletop role-playing games in general, right behind and around it, that it's never had before. And alongside that I think has increased teachers that are like, oh, I'm going to try this thing. It's a lesson for Thursday and Friday. What's the worst that can happen? Let me try this thing. And it's from that innovation and opportunity to experiment and try some new things. I think that's why it's more of it, and to be able to find and capture these stories. It's just, I think I was just lucky to kind of hit a zeitgeist moment with it in education, perhaps.
That's awesome. And so it's we attended that professional development day, and that was a blast. And it's great that you're doing this in our state. We love our state. We want this to happen in our state.
Yeah.
Now, Lee, you actually put some of this to use in your classroom, didn't you?
I can't wait to hear about this. Yes, please.
Yeah,
tell us more.
I feel like we could have done some of the other talk, but I want to hear this. Like, this is, there's other stuff we want to talk about, but I want to hear you guys do this. So go.
Yeah.
So I am the kind of person, I'll preface with this. I'm a teacher, but I really love pedagogy. It's so interesting to me. Like, how do people learn? Like, how do you teach? How can I make a kid know something they don't want to know?
I'm wonky like that too. Yep.
Yeah. It's, but I'm also the type of person I'm a little, I don't know. I'm weird about it. If I go to Taco Bell, I'm going to eat whatever's advertised. If I go to Arby's, whatever's on the wall, I'm going to try it out. So it's like I love professional development opportunities. So I'm like, you know what? As soon as I get that opportunity, I'm going to try it out. I'm very happy to jump on and try something out. So I went to this, and I was a little skeptical at first. I was telling Josh, I was like, on the way there, I was like, man, I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Hey, so this guy's
I'm also
full of crap.
protective. I'm protective of my time. Say what?
This guy's full of crap. Full of crap. This is awful. I don't want to go to this. Where'd you find this?
Well, we should emphasize too, this is a full day PD. So that is a bit of a commitment, right? Like, it's free, but you're about to give me 6 hours plus of your life. Like, yeah, you better make something happen, Cap.
No, he was very excited.
Like, I wanted it to work. I wanted it to work too, but it was also like, we're kind of forced to be, what's the word? Precious with our time with our students because of so many other things.
Subs are hard to get and all the things. Yes.
I apologize. I'm sorry.
This will work, and this will be effective, and it'll be worth the time. It'll be worth the buy-in. So,
Lee, real quick.
Professional development.
Lee, I don't mean to. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Lee, but if anyone hears like heavy, deep moaning coming from my side, it's my dog behind me who is really getting into something. He scratches his ears.
It's when you started, listen, Lee, when you use the word pedagogy, I think that's when that moan began. That's what I'm thinking. I think that's the secret word.
That's funny. It's like Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Yeah. Right. He's looking at me like I told on him, and I'm so sorry to interrupt you on that. I just wanted to, in case people can hear this happening, just want them to know what it is.
Everyone's listening to the podcast, rewound a few seconds, like, let's listen for it. It's like, like going to Waverly Hills Sanatorium and like, do you hear the ghost? I'm sorry, Lee, you
might not be able to hear it. Yeah, so you were.
It must have been a great story.
Yeah.
It must have been best
So
story
he
this book has
was.
ever
Malcolm
heard.
was digging it. He was loving
Yeah,
it.
I
But
love
you had some trepidation at first.
Yes.
You were cautiously optimistic, and what happened?
Yes. All right. So I went. Absolutely love the professional development. It was wonderful. Thank you guys for that. I was enthused, and I went back and I tried it out with my classroom. We had been reading "The Haunting of Hill House" by Shirley Jackson with my sophomores, right? And so I was like, well, I think this is going to be pretty easy to throw in there. So using AI, using Notebook LM that you had also, I had recently heard about that. I don't know, Friday, and then Monday I think was our professional development, or maybe Tuesday, something like that. But either way, you also mentioned it, and I was like, okay, awesome. You gave us some great resources. I took your Mayflower information. I took some of the resources that you provided us, plugged that into Notebook LM, plugged in the book, plugged the book as a PDF into this Notebook LM folder.
Yes.
Plugged in my Kentucky Academic Standards, and I was like, let's make an RPG. Let's make a tabletop RPG based on the characters of Hill House. And so, with a lot of finagling, eventually I got to the point that it worked and created for me this idea of escaping Hill House. So I made it a very simple setup. I had it develop some role-playing sheets for me, and the characters were they had modifiers rather than, it was like they had maybe a +3 to perception, or they had a +2 to sanity or whatever, or resistance to the occult or whatever. And so I had the students, first of all, roll up their sheets, or I had, well, I guess they weren't rolling up their sheets. I had them writing in what they thought each character would do, or how they would fare against stuff like the occult. It's like, how would Eleanor resist the occult? Would she get like a +3, a +2, +1, -1, -2, -3? That was the scale I gave them. So don't repeat any scores. And so they had to go through and kind of balance out characters. And they did it for each of the characters, and they gave textual evidence to support why. So they were going through
I
the book.
love this. Okay.
It was.
So you did it was almost like a standard array of -3 to +3. So you could only use each score. This is great. Keep going.
Yep. So they did the sheet. And, well, let's see. I have it here. It was sanity, perception of the unseen, resolve, empathy, isolation, influence. And they went with pluses and negatives.
Can we put that in the show notes link?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So there'll be links to these. Yeah. We'll send them over. Yeah.
So I had them do that, and this was like the day after, maybe the 2 days after. It wasn't long.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because I told you, man, I'm like in it. So,
he was talking the entire way home. He was like, "I'm gonna do this. I can't wait to get to school tomorrow, so I can start doing this with get the kids in on this." It was great.
Dude, I'm a nerd for it. Like, I love it. So I had them do that, and they were doing the textual evidence, and like I kind of did it, on a whim. I was trying to get it out quickly, and I have a co-teacher in that classroom with me, that first classroom, and it's a lot of inclusion students in that classroom, right? A lot of inclusion students, and they were enamored, and I was like, "Do you see this?" And she was like, with the conversations we were hearing, like, no, that wouldn't be like a +3. Dr. Montague, he doesn't really care for, like, he's interested in ghosts, but he doesn't really think that anything's going to happen. And,
so that's the academic rigor of that. Yes,
dude, it was gross. Like, I was so excited about it, and so I was like, I kept going. And every single student, dude, every single student in that class was in it. They all had separate characters, but they were like, having conversations about their characters as they were going and such. And it was just so great to see them doing that, justifying that with textual evidence. So they knocked that out. I was so impressed with that already. So the next day I had them play the game, and the idea was, it was a very simple setup. So it was kind of like the Mayflower idea. I gave them scenarios of things that would happen in Hill House, like the pounding on the doors or whatever. It's like, and characters would have to roll certain checks to see how they would respond to that situation. Each student was assigned a character or whatever, and I gave them like everybody had a D6. Is how I rolled it out. It's like everything's gonna be based on D6, because these are people that have never tried this before. Several students have never tried this before, never considered this idea of rolling dice to play a game,
right?
Sort of stuff.
In this way, Monopoly is one thing, but yes, absolutely, I hear you.
Right. So had them like I actually moved my class to the library so I could have them all at like bigger tables to sit around and do such. But I explained what a scenario would look like. I can share this in the show notes too. Share this with you too, Adam, if you'd like to see it.
Oh, it's going to be linked on KY at RPG. I can already feel it. Go ahead.
But so I gave him a scenario like as an example. I was like, let's say your characters are just walking up to knock on the door of Hill House or something like that. You know, like what would some issues be? It's like, so let's say it takes a little bit of resolve. You have to roll a check for resolve to see if you have the resolve to walk up and knock on this house, which has a reputation for danger, and it's scary, it's grotesque, it's described as grotesque. How would you handle that? And so like I had them roll or whatever, and it's like looking at their stats of like how many people failed this. I'm trying to walk all of them through how to work this, guiding them, and what the scenarios should look like. And so they roll them and they're like, I failed or whatever. And I was like, well, you might think about this. It's like, now, if you were Dr. Montague and you suddenly failed to be able to knock on the door, how do you think he actually reacted? What did he say? What did he do? And they're like, well, what maybe he did this. And they're role playing. They start talking about it like that. And I was like, see, that's exactly what I'm looking for. You guys are creating the story together. So what it would be like. And so the idea was like they had 10. So that introduced them to the idea. And then there were situations straight from the book of like the pounding on the door, driving the car to escape Hill House as Eleanor, seeing the bloody writing on the wall sort of stuff and how people would react to that. And they had identity points. And the idea was that they weren't dying. They were losing their identity points. And if they lost enough identity points, they would become part of the house. And I was like,
brilliant.
Probably a little more complex than it needed to be for them, but it worked.
Right.
So I was like, if you become part of the house, your rules change. And so they would come over to me if they lost all their points. I'd be like, you're now trying to make people to join the house. So if they were successful in their rules, you can say, re-roll that. So that
wait a minute. Let me just pause for a second. I just want to absorb this and just say this out loud. You acted like, well, a couple of days, I threw this together. We're going to try it. This is like, I feel like I would go and buy this for 20 or 30 bucks, like a module. This is incredible. This is really cool.
And it was like, it all comes from just hammering down. Like it was a lot to hammer out in Notebook LM, even though it is AI generated stuff. It's like making sure it was what I wanted. A lot of
you collaborated with it. Absolutely. It went out, and the kids, not to be punny as they say, but the kids rolled with it. Like they didn't like, hang on, I don't understand what a +3 is. Like they just were in it to win it. They did it okay.
Yeah. Oh, they loved it, and they were like, okay, I want to do this. I want to do this more. Like I want to do some more stuff with this. And so what was cool was like the students that had never done this sort of stuff were like, this is awesome. The students that had played D&D before were like, this is cool, but they recognized that it was very simple. Like they were like, we need more agency.
That's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask if you had like any of the veteran D&D kids in there that were like, well, now this is how this would actually go.
Well, one specifically said, it was like, it's cool that I'm able to play a tabletop RPG with a cheerleader at my table.
Yeah. Well,
that was the dream, boys, wasn't it? That was the dream.
That was the dream.
Look at you, Lee.
Oh, hello. Let me share with you,
right. Can I share? This is a fun story. You said the thing about the cheerleader. It's a quick tangent, but I think this podcast is good for tangents, so that's good.
Oh, honey, we never go on tangents. Don't even bring that up here, Adam. We are straight on the topic 100% of the time.
So there are a couple of friends of mine. They're in Washington, Illinois. It's a Central Illinois high school, and I met them early on in this capering and adventuring around of KY at RPG and tabletop role-playing games. They were lovely because they were like, their podcast is called Teachers in the Dungeon. So the idea of it was, hey, you're a teacher, dungeon, I get it. And so we talked, ended up being a guest on the show, and friendship grew from there. But recently, a story that they shared on their podcast, the faculty had a thing where there was different opportunities on a PD day, like someone, okay, we have all the school stuff, but for maybe this hour, do something that is a passion of a teacher. So there was someone that played guitar, another person that was quilting. You get the idea. But for Dan and Tom, our friends of Teachers in the Dungeon, they were like, well, hey, we'll show in a really short, easy, simplified way what D&D is like. And they had two teachers that are co-leaders of the cheerleading team play it and just loved it. So time passes, and the one of them comes up to Dan and Tom and says, "Here's what I'd like to do. I would like on a certain day for your gaming club," and they have a huge game club of kids. "I would like your gaming club kids, like a core of them that are good student DMs, to lead my basically varsity or cheerleading team on a D&D adventure, like a one shot." And so, cheerleaders, like 3 or 4 per group, one DM. And it was delightful. I mean, we live in a world where it's not quite like a 1980s John Hughes movie. It's not like they didn't necessarily know each other, or they were like, "Eh, they're gross." I mean, it wasn't that stereotyped at all.
No.
But it was a lovely thing where it's like people, they literally, the cheerleaders were walked into the library not knowing what's going on. It's like, okay, instead of practice today, this is what we're going to do. And her point, which afterwards, when the cheerleaders and everyone debriefed, is that there are a lot of you that need to rely on each other. You need leadership. You need to collaborate, right? And you may not know a thing about D&D, but it's not about the D&D. It's about learning about and bonding with each other and depending on each other, and you've got each other's back. And not only did they get that element out of it, but it was also a thing where many of them were like, "I'd never played D&D, had really little, I knew Stranger Things." Like, again, that may have been their superficial knowledge. It's like, that's really fun. Like, I'd actually play that again. And there you go. It's just giving people that opportunity. So that when you said cheerleader, I'm sorry, that was a tangent, but I had to share that story as an example of, it's not, I mean, all those stereotypes are very 19, like back when I was young.
Your Breakfast Club.
Yes, it's different now, which is what I love.
Oh, it definitely is. Because again, like the students I would not have expected to accept this were the most excited about it. So
did they read the book? Did they read the story before or after this?
They had already read.
Okay, so that was their preface. Like they knew that
8 chapters, So
which is why they could do the text evidence and all the things. Okay, gotcha.
Let me share this with you. Like, I know I hate to take up a lot of time with this sort of stuff, but man, the evidence here is just disgustingly good. So after they played,
we got a lot of listeners right now that tuned into this and went, "What in the hell is this?" Heard pedagogy and professional development days and all this stuff. They're like, "What?"
Right, this is crazy.
I want you to nerds of all types, man.
I want you to talk about Power Rangers. What do you do? We're talking about tabletop RPGs, but we're also doing a little bit of work
Why
stuff.
Didn't I have Mr. Fouts in class?
Yeah, 110%.
That would have been cool.
I talk to people all the time that tell me their kids can't wait to have you in class.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh, I can see that.
They want to hit me. So here's after the game was over. I was like, let's keep pushing or whatever. After playing, I gave him this assignment, this quick one. I'll read this to you. It says, after playing the board game and reviewing the board game rules, I have a copy if you were absent, because, what is a way that you can incorporate some character-defining traits into the game? Consider one of the following. Luke Sanderson is a liar. Eleanor is an unreliable narrator. Theodora is talented but selfish. Dr. Montague is desperate to prove himself. How can one of these ideas be incorporated into the game to better represent the character? Because they wanted agency, right? They wanted more character agency. I said, use textual evidence from the book and your specific experience from the board game to assist you in answering this question. And I gave an example like it was Shrek. Like if Shrek was a TTRPG, Donkey is talkative and overly optimistic, what could you do? Sort of stuff. Yeah. I want to read a couple of responses to you, if you don't mind.
Please.
I was just so impressed.
Absolutely.
So,
Josh, I vetoed Josh. Go ahead.
Okay. This is one of my favorites here. So the idea that Dr. Montague is desperate to prove himself can be incorporated into the board game to better represent the character. In the book, Dr. Montague is constantly giving explanations as to why he is right about something. He is also backing his information up and trying his best to get his point across to the other characters. Even in the moments that paranormal activity is taking place, he's always given an explanation as to why he is right. In other words, trying to prove himself. For example, on page 134 and 135, Dr. Montague is trying to explain that Luke's attitude isn't cowardly, but rather sensible. He states, we make it a point to stay together after dark. To represent this trait in the game, I could give Dr. Montague's player a rule where they had to stay quiet and not explain themselves if they rolled a number under 5. This will make Dr. Montague's trait a crucial part of understanding challenges or puzzles the game could contain. I was like, what?
Jaw-dropping, yeah.
This student had never played a game like this before.
Because think of all the complexity of that. It's not only knowledge, all the ELA standards, right? It's not only the knowledge of the text and being able to explain, defend with evidence, all that. school stuff. But the brilliance that really just elevates it is to understand in a game design way, game design balance and mechanics, to incorporate that into my explanation why and because. That's chef's kiss. I mean, that's to be able to do that is a pinnacle moment, right? I mean, that's really really good, and only could have happened because Mr. Fouts gave us an opportunity to play a TTRPG. That is awesome.
One more. This is a student with a specific IP regarding English, right? Said this is a response. Said after playing the Hill House game, one way I could incorporate character defining traits into the game would be to focus on Eleanor's craziness. In the book, Eleanor's always going crazy, even if they ain't doing much. For example, in the book, it says I'm 34 years old. I wonder what obscure defiance made me add 2 years, and then gave Jackson 101 as the page number. So right there, she just lies for no reason. She didn't even know why. To represent this trait in the game, I can make the person who's Eleanor get one chance to lie or be confused about something. For example, if she needs a 2 to pass and she rolls a 1, she could be crazy and say she got a 3, but she can only use it a certain amount of times. But if she lies, her sanity goes down.
That's awesome. Dude, that's so good. So, real quick, Lee, what is an IP? Just for anybody that's listening doesn't know what that means, like for context.
Individual education plan.
Okay.
So it's like if a student is struggling in a particular area, we can create an individual education plan.
And this student has an individual education plan for, I feel like one of those like QVC people where I asked a question and then I'm emphasizing the answer to that question, right? You know, I have problems cooking at the house with my hands. Well, this will help you with that. It will, right? But so this student had a problem in English, and had an action plan for that, and they're this
producing stuff like that.
And they're articulating like that,
yeah. Which I'm having trouble doing tonight is articulating. I'm so tired and I apologize, but I'm listening and I love it.
That's money in the bank. I love it. Thank you for sharing.
You've certainly made me a believer, Adam. This is great stuff. So,
oh my gosh. Well, thank you. That's cool. And I have a feeling that based on your success and based on the interest of the kids, we still got half a year, man. There's at least maybe one or two more opportunities. You could squeeze something in. Yeah.
I'm absolutely going to. Actually, we're doing final exam project times right now, and one of the opportunities for their project is to rewrite the board game, to change up different scenarios and whatever it is, to show their understanding of the standards. So, as you know, to further that, I mean, there's nine other options, but one of them is messing with the board game. So it's really cool to see them be so invested, to be so interested. So, and like when you think about, dude, when you talk about vibrant learning, which is a huge focus right now, it doesn't get much more vibrant than that, dude.
No, it is very vibrant. It is vibrant with the capital Vi.
and I think with this, I mean, cool. From someone outside the education sphere, which I taught a little bit when I was first going through college. I've done a little bit of that, but nothing to where it was my career. It's fascinating to think that you guys, by bringing this in, you're not only engaging the students with the curriculum, with the coursework, but you're introducing a whole extracurricular activity to kids that may not have been, introduced to it or may not have picked it up organically some other way, right? We're not trying to force our ideas on kids, but it gets exciting when we see someone that we are trying to instruct become invested in something we know about, because that gives us opportunities to teach, to help, to be excited about teaching them and sharing ideas and opportunities and stuff like that. The next great role-playing game may come from one of your all's, a student that has been engaging with tabletop role-playing games in the classroom who may never have been interested in that, right? The next Dungeons and Dragons type thing that affects the nerdosphere in that way. And it's cool to think that you're unlocking that level. You're potentially unlocking that love, that lifetime love that we have for these games in these kids. It's great.
Yeah, it's one of the things in my current job. I'm a digital learning consultant is my official title. And as you mentioned, glowingly and delightfully with Orson Welles-ian tones of my biography at the beginning. It's 14 school districts, and because one of them is Jefferson County Public Schools, which is Louisville. It's over 150,000 students. But in that range of those 14 districts, to be able to travel and meet so many different teachers doing lots of wonderful things, not least of which might be like a tabletop role playing or some kind of other game-based learning opportunity. It is really fun to see the seeds being planted. And again, I think of Adam 1986. Adam, I would have been 12. I think if someone had told me that of course, this is the 80s and all the fun that was going on with tabletop role-playing games, D&D in particular at the time, it had some issues of optics, as they would say nowadays, right? The satanic panic and all those things. Yeah. But still, if 12-year-old Adam had an opportunity, for example, be in a game club, extracurricular, maybe outside of an instructional experience, but even that would have blown my mind. That to have that on like the hollowed school grounds is like, And nowadays you could throw a stone and every other school has that. That's an amazing thing that just gets more awareness, and therefore when an opportunity like a TTRPG educational experience pops out, students are like, oh, they watch the Stranger Things, or, actually, if I don't, my friend is actually in the game club. So there's just an awareness, and that just helps us get that much faster rocking and rolling as far as trying to do things like that in the classroom.
So let me comment on that too. It's kind of inspired me that I don't know if you remember the young man that was sitting with us. He's into it too. Like he's
yes.
He's invested, man. He's so excited about it. His mom actually is my coworker. Like, so she was like, "Oh yeah, he came home and he was tore up. Like, he was so excited about it."
The mind was racing.
Oh yeah, so it's really cool to take that sort of stuff and share it with people, especially the people who are also maybe hesitant about these situations, to go look at like this is working. And like I had, as an kind of another testimony thing of the this counselor. Our school counselor was walking through the library when we were doing this, and she was like, "Ooh." So she stopped and was like taking pictures and getting excited, asking about things. Yeah.
What? Anyway, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm inspired to. I've talked to administration. I've talked to a counselor, and next year I'm wanting to do an entire class, sophomore class, and I love TTRPGs. Video games are really kind of my forte, like for my nerddom. Mm-hmm.
I know. So you have your channel. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I'm wanting to teach a class specifically using video games because I'm confident that we can hit all those ELA standards with something regarding video games to some extent. And I think what I want to do with that is like what I told the counselor, I said, "Give me your poor and your downtrodden. So give me some students that are like not going to do well in any other class." Like,
are you trying to Dead Poets Society video games?
Pretty much.
like is that?
Everyone's going to sit on their desk.
Yeah, but when I started teaching at an alternative school. That's where I started my career.
Oh, Captain, my Falcon.
I really enjoyed that. It's super rewarding, man, to do that.
Well, especially to connect with people that have struggled to find anything that they would consider "quote unquote" successful or "quote unquote" what I'm good at in school, and that's finding those opportunities. Yes.
So I'm recruiting. I've been going to the freshman English classes and being like, "Hey, who in here's into some video games or struggling?" So,
I love it. A little scouting out. Yes.
Hey, I've been scouting a little bit. But the principal's son is also like, he's interested in this sort of stuff. He actually watches my channel, and I was like, "Give me him." Like, I want him in my class.
He might also have good words to say to Dad. That would be good.
Yeah. So I was like, I want to do this, but I also want to, not just gamifying, as you put it before, which I'm sure we'll talk about that here in a moment, but to really invest them in like rolling characters at the beginning of the year to go along with this, and have them use their characters representative of themselves to some degree throughout the entire year. So I'm really excited about starting fresh with that, with the whole class, and intending to push it through.
Well, I should say this really quick, is this is the beginning of the beautiful friendship. So Lee, you're going to have to share your adventures, not only through the podcast, but dropping me lines here and there about how that goes. And anything that I can do to help, I definitely want to help on. That would be a fantastic journey. There was a couple things you mentioned, so I wanted to just roll back. We mentioned Mayflower. We threw that word out a few times. For those that are out there, there is a point in the PD day where early on, it's like we've talked a little bit, defined a little bit about what is a tabletop role-playing game, but early on, it's like, let's play one. Like, that's the best way you're going to experience one. And also, as a proof of example, like, it doesn't have to be overly complicated. There's mechanics built into it to make it kind of self-manage itself as far as groups of people at a table. Let's do one. And so there's a simulation that a social studies historic web educational website had come up with a simulation called the Mayflower 2. And basically it was that people 400 years in the future are on a rocket. They crash on the wrong part of Mars outside of a country's designation. They have to learn how to survive. And the experience of the TTRPG is basically like either they're a worker or a scientist, which they have some random and balanced out mechanics of you're good at this, I'm not so good at that. And they go through these random scenarios and they roll, do they succeed? Do they get hurt? So on and so forth. And then at the end, they do a debrief kind of thing where it's like, okay, from all these things we've learned, what kind of government system do we want to make? And it's obviously a riff off of, it's called Mayflower 2. It's a riff off the Mayflower, landing on Plymouth Rock, 1620 adventure of historical fact. So that module, those materials people play, and then it's like, look, take it, mock it, skin it, reskin it as something that makes sense for your thing, at least as an inspiration point. So the actual PDs are continuing, and if you go to kyedrpg.com and you go to the events page, you'll see like what's the latest or the next one up. And in fact, the next one that's posted is one in Bowling Green, and that's happening in March. So there's sign up and more information there. And depending when you listen to this particular podcast, even in the future, just check back on that to see what other future PDs that we might have. And they're always free, these Dungeons and Desk ones that we've been doing.
Should be around December 14th. Should.
Well, there you go.
We
in advance before March.
We just lost a Legend of Zelda episode. This was supposed to be episode 35, and I'd mentioned this to Adam before we started recording, but we just lost it. We did a Legend of Zelda episode, and we promised people it was going to be out in November. We apologize, guys. It was audio corruption. No fault of our own this time. It just messed up.
The gremlins were there, yeah.
Yeah. So we are doing the Legend of Zelda episode. That is coming out, but it will be coming out in February for the actual birthday of Zelda instead of Zelda months, the actual birthday of February. Just anybody that was interested in that. But yes, this should be around December 14th.
Excellent.
When that comes out. But I want to take a second because I saw Lee giggling, and I think Lee and I were giggling about the same thing. Because I started when you started talking about the scenario. And our team of ragamuffins, of ne'er-do-wells, we ended up with, so some young lady joined our table, me, Lee, and our friend, or Lee's coworker, who I know through mutual stuff, joined us. And we randomly picked characters, and she ended up being a scientist, and it was a scientist and worker were the two options, right? She was a scientist. The three of us were workers. So we were the big...
She was the brains of the operation. Huh?
Yeah, we were the Neanderthals. She was our, professor. She was killed by a meteor almost immediately. I mean, within 4 rolls. She died it was a meteor, right? It was or a rock fall. We were trying to retrieve something, and she was killed because because scientists were bad at strength-based tasks, which is not always the case. Some scientists are strong and beefy, but in this case, this scientist was not. And she passed due to unfortunate events. And
shuffled off the moral coil.
And then our team at this professional development day, it evolved into what can only be described as Lord of the Flies-esque madness, where the young, our mutual friend, whose character he affectionately named the Krungler, I believe that's what its name was, right? Lee, was that the Krungler? The Krungler had found a rock because we had taken core samples. And this is all in game, by the way. Anybody listen? We had taken core samples, and the Krungler had was now worshiping the core sample as a god, and now we were looking to the core sample to guide us. because we took worker
Tell us what to do,
as
oh mineral.
yeah, we took worker like, oh, they're slightly less on the intelligence side, more on the physical side. And we took that to mean, barely functional Neanderthals. That's what,
Now we could give grace. We could say maybe they're more superstitious, perhaps, or they were just more susceptible to.
We could say that. It would not be accurate in the least. They were they were immediately apt to believing whatever the brightest object in the room was a sentient god.
Okay,
and
nice.
And that was what we did.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Mary, that was the first time she'd ever experienced anything like that.
Yeah.
Joining us from KVIC. She's wonderful. She never experienced anything like
that.
Like we had her rolling, dude.
Yeah. And she had a great time. Yeah, I didn't mean to gloss over that, but yeah, I mean, even though and failure in RPGs can be fun, and I think that I'm sure you guys talk about that in your classroom stuff with it, where it's this can be a good way to teach that failure has consequences other than just it's over, right? It can be a tool for continuation of story, for another area for critical thinking. How does failure change what my plan was? And so that was a really cool experience. And I mean, especially you could see three dudes be morons for a few minutes. But it was really great, and she did great. Yeah.
Something in that RPG too was like when students were rolling, they were at first I noticed they were getting a little frustrated if they failed something. But I was like, well, folks, it's not about failure. You were all cooperatively trying to escape Hill House. So it's like, what happens to you? Like if something happens, you try to move along, and if you do fail, I was like, if you become part of the house, you're trying to mess with your friends. Now they were into that part as well. So just to see them, and that's such a hard thing for students anyway. It's just to accept failure and realize how important failure is. So in my class, if a student will say, I don't know if this is right, I'll say, I hope it's not. I hope it's not correct, because that's one more thing you're going to learn today. So
you learn from mistakes. Yeah.
I think
what I love, Lee, that you also did is in my Mayflower 2 thing, the experience is obviously condensed and short for a lot of reasons. I make sure that it's 30, 40 minutes tops, not least of which, what if this was a period of instructional classroom time and I'm proving you could do it. But there is an element of if you're a scientist and you have less hit points because of that, and you just have bad luck of random scenarios and or dice rolls that lead to your demise. There is, for an instructor, you're thinking, what am I going to do in their downtime if like they have 3 random scenarios, but they're dead by the first end, or they did, they're defeated. Yeah. If you don't want to use the word dead, of course. The thing I love, Lily, that you did is, and it works so much on the theme of your story is that your identity points, first of all. So that's nice. And the second thing is that, well, getting to 0 doesn't mean you're done. It just means you've changed a role from this person human role to now the house role and still continuing, which is really, that's really clever, because that means there's no way to stop playing. Even if the one thing ends, you're still playing as the other. So that's really smart. I mean, that's the takeaway I'm having from just our conversation, is thinking about things like that. Because if you have too long of a situation, well, I'm gone after round 1. What do I do? Sit here and twiddle my thumbs? Like, that's something you have to think about as an instructor if you're bringing in a TTRPG and playing it episodically. And I know I've teased these words several times. I do want to take a minute in a moment to talk about the framework thing. But yeah, if you're playing an episodic TTRPG experience, you don't want them to be like, if they do not make it, what are they going to do the rest of the time? So you have to just figure that as part of your mechanic.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bummer. We've probably all sat at a table where we died.
Oh yeah,
in D&D, and it's like, okay, that sucks. Let's see what Ray else is up to.
Right.
I mean, it's also a good. As a DM, I mean, because I've came at it from a player standpoint where I've died or the action wasn't on me for that moment, or I failed something, it removed me from that engagement, right? We've all, like you said, Lee, we've all been there. But even from a DM perspective, looking at it, the DM / teacher, and again, I'm not an educator, so I apologize if I'm stepping on any toes or trying to sound like I know what I'm talking about. But just to me, from being on the outside, this seems like there would be good tools for an educator to engage a student that feels like they're outside of instruction. Yeah. They're learning those DM tactics, or vice versa, that there is overlap there, that there's something mutually beneficial to using those tactics and getting these kids engaged that would otherwise be outside of that. If that makes sense.
One last thing, and I'll shut up. But it was such a great experience. What I furthered that later with the lesson 2 and talking about losing their identity points, whatever else. And I asked my students to consider like some MTSS sort of stuff and some social emotional ideas. I was like, what are some of the factors that was causing people to lose their identity?
Was it MTSS?
Whatever else. Multi-tier support system, just making sure that our students are kept track of, like with where they stand, make sure nobody falls behind, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So kind
tier
of
1 is like what everyone gets, and then as you go up the tiers, the pyramid narrows to less humans that need more intentional support, more intensive support the farther up you go.
Okay.
That's MTSS in a nutshell.
And so I had them considering too, because like I'd heard them, you hear students say some really disturbing stuff, and you realize how hard life really is for teenagers. Holy smokes!
Yeah.
But I was like, what are some factors that could be like something you experienced in the game, like some factors you deal with in high school, maybe bullying, maybe this sort of stuff. And I was like, what causes you to lose identity points as you go throughout your day, and that sort of stuff. Yeah, that sort of stuff, dude. They ate it up, like they say they don't want to talk about themselves, but they want to talk about themselves.
Of course. That was also, man, Lee, that's awesome. That was yes. And again, making that connection to self. Like, how do you see yourself in this game? We talk about with literature lots of times mirrors and windows, right? Mirrors, you see yourself. Windows, you see through another person's eyes. But that's a lovely way of saying we all are losing. All of us, adults, kids, we struggle with like losing our identity points sometimes. Sometimes we start feeling like we're about to become part of the house, So how do we deal with that? What do we deal with it, or what causes that? That's great. That's good stuff.
It was a good experience. So
I love it.
So we've listened to Lee talk about all the great stuff he learned from you and how he implemented it, and amazing. I was excited to hear you guys have that conversation, but I want to focus back on you for a little bit, Adam. We've been going for a little bit over an hour here, and it seems like it's going great. So we'll keep going a little bit longer if it's cool with everybody. So we talked about the word gamification was thrown out a minute ago, and there's something that you speak about on the PD and in your book. I assume quite a bit. I haven't read your book yet. I haven't got my hands on it. But I assume you're going to talk about this in your book quite a bit. Game-based learning versus gamification. Mm-hmm. And can you talk about what those two things are, what the differences are? Lee's going to get a drink. Lee doesn't care about any of this. He's gone now.
He heard the spiel. He
said,
so he knows it.
He said what he wanted to say. He spoke. He doesn't care what you're going to say.
I do care.
Hydration's important, Lee. Don't listen to Josh.
Hydration's important.
No, but
do you work these blood clots out of my legs? Did you see me?
Oh yeah. We're all dangerously unhealthy. But game-based learning versus gamification. If you could just talk about that for a minute and what the two things are. I thought that was really, really interesting. For the PD.
And that'll be a good segue into a framework thing that I kind of centered the book around. So game-based learning versus gamification. So gamification tends to feels kind of like a dessert rather than a main course. Gamification is the elements perhaps of a game in not playing a game, an actual game. So what might that look like or feel like? One of the things that's a good example of that is like and I'm speaking rural Kentucky here for all the friends outside of Kentucky that would be like, what's that grocery store? But Kroger, right? The grocery store has a shopper rewards thing, and you zap your little card or put in your phone number or whatever, and you earn points for every dollar you spend. And after so many dollars, you can cash that in for fuel rewards, right? Cheaper gas or whatever the case may be. That's gamification because the elements, the idea of like experience points, very, very tabletop role-playing game, very D&D, right? You earn these XP and then you get to level up, which is an element of tabletop role-playing games. But notice no one, Kroger, like I never actually took out a dagger and a broadsword, and I didn't have to like conquer the green beans in aisle 5. I didn't, have to roll to see if I successfully did a crit. I didn't have to do any of that.
Trip to Kroger be a lot cooler if you did. Just say, be a hell of a better trip to go pick up some peanut butter.
I was
slay a
gonna say,
hydra.
if you had like a fantasy themed TTRPG grocery store, that is what all three of us need to invest $3 each in.
And I'll tell you what, I've got behind some people in the grocery store that bumble, and several times I've wished I've had a broadsword, or at least like a poker or some type.
Yes. So anyway, gamification, the elements, right? And then there's a game-based learning, and immediately you see a deeper, more immersive experience happen when you play an actual game. And I'm saying game in a generic sense right now. It doesn't have to necessarily be a tabletop role-playing game. So it's dessert versus main course. It's gamification versus game-based learning. And it's important to also say that I don't want to be judgmental when I use those words or phrases, that they have their place and point. And if you have an objective and it feels more like gamification than game-based learning, it's you always in school and education, you have to come back to, but what's my objective? Especially in an instructional period of time, it's like, what's my learning objective? So you pick the path, you pick the thing that you need, and don't, I'm not here to shame you because you only gamified. In the book, one of the things that's central and early in the book is I talk about frameworks. And I talk about a degree of facilitation framework. And that's a framework that is the idea of how do you take an experience of a game and how do you arrange and manage it when you have 30 individuals. And so that degree of facilitation goes from you don't need it because there's no game actually being played. So that's easy. And then it kind of goes up from there. It's an auto GM experience, I call it. That's like what we did with you and the friends when you did that Mayflower 2 tabletop role-playing game. There's a random chart. So as a group, you rolled the dice. There was a scenario. You resolved that scenario. You went to the next. But you were managed by that. That's how you cloned yourself to a room of 30 people, right? Then there's an educator-led experience where somehow you are playing the DM, the GM. And then there's finally, last but not least, a student experience where you have students lead small groups. The other framework, and that ties more into the gamification game-based learning, is the idea of degree of infusion, the depth of infusion, excuse me. So it goes from an adjacent experience, and that's basically an experience outside of instruction. So that's an extracurricular club, basically, like a game club. Then you have a elemental infusion, and that's where it's kind of gamified. We did another thing, I think, in our PD where we did a character sheet activity where everyone had a character sheet. In this case, it was a D&D one, but it doesn't have to be a D&D character sheet. And you had a choice. You could either do it as a literary character or as a person famous in history. And then the idea of it is that it's less about the accuracy of what the numbers, whether it's a standard array. It's not getting hung up on that as much as it is about quantifying and qualifying a person or a character and defending those choices. But notice that I didn't necessarily play a game with that character. I'm using an element of TTRPGs, in this case, a character sheet, as an instructional experience and as an activity. Then you have episodic. You play an actual game like Lee just talked about and did. And then last but not least is the full infusion, which is a whole course that's wrapped around and built. And that kind of goes back to the Cave Dwells anecdote that I shared at the beginning of the podcast, where the course basically starts with perhaps, we're going to roll up a character and all of our standards are going to be met through this experience and playing several of these TTRPG adventures throughout and so on. So the amazing thing in my journey and my research, and even just in Kentucky alone, is finding examples of all of that. And, I didn't have to necessarily go that far. Even a full infusion, there's a few individuals, Jefferson County, a recent version of that was Sterling Harris, someone that I interviewed recently. I'm writing an article up and going to be published, but should be by the end of the month, where he has a creative writing with D&D class. That's what it's called. But it's as academically rigorous as you'd like it to be. It's got the EL reading and writing standards. It's got social emotional learning built in. It's got durable skills. They have Journey to Success is what they call it in Jefferson County Public Schools. So it is as rich of a course and as rigorous as a course as you'd ever want it. But it's D&D, and they actually play in game, and the gaming inspires the writing, but they have to write in order to have the privilege to play, and it's this wonderful circle.
Sounds amazing. I imagine that gentleman that was with us playing at our table. That's what he'll end up doing. I think that's what he was talking about doing. Is he has a genre class, a literature genre class that he teaches right now. He was like, I'm gonna have them bad boys rolling up characters and going through different,
I love it.
going through different scenarios with their characters. You know, like almost like multiverse, I guess, sort of stuff.
I love it. Well, and I know we're now, Lee and I are both, I was a former high school English teacher. Lee, I know that's your gig too. And we talked a lot about literature. But I mean, history, science, even math, which is sometimes the trickiest of the four main contents to kind of wrap your head around. But they all have options and opportunities to do that. So it's a multi-content, multi-grade level. There are elementary TTRPGs. This is an elementary school aged appropriate TTRPGs, or take D&D and simplify it down to its course. People have. Absolutely. So it doesn't have to be just high school, and it doesn't have to be just English. There's lots of opportunities. In the book, I certainly give lots of examples, and of course on kyedrpg.com on the resources page, I have tools and educator stories and research and articles and a lot to pick and pull from as far as trying to find something that resonates with you as a certain grade level or use a certain content.
I'm excited to see this article that you said you were finishing up with.
I've got a rough draft. It's the place is going to be published, is already on board and excited. So it's just, finalizing and all those things. So with any luck, it'll hopefully be at the end of the month. And I'll certainly drop a line in an email once it comes out, just so you can see it and read it. I actually interviewed Sterling, and it was really just for personal purposes, for information, and then for a transcription. But with his permission, I did a small edit on it and tightened it on a few spots. And I'm going to try to also just publish it as a full-length podcast. I'm not really a podcaster and don't pretend to have like you all are so awesome about, like, regular schedule and all that. I don't know if I'd be.
Hear that? Hear that, everybody out there? After we just said we're not
lost your
we just lost one. Hear that? We're great. You're welcome.
This is a professional, and he said it.
That's right. You got the certificate for me. I'll mail it. To you.
You're goddamn welcome.
But point being is that I have a YouTube channel that I've been using for a while, and so that might be part of the story and part of a link or published on that as well. As just the raw, like, here's his interview, because he was just really interesting. He's a great guy with great experiences and had a lot of wonderful things to say. So it's kind of, again, I've used the word celebration several times tonight, but that's part of this job and this adventure on the KY RPG in the book. One of the best parts about it is really just celebrating others, celebrating other people like Lee, who have done some amazing things in classrooms and sharing that story. And it's innovative and it's different and it's joyful. And in a world today where education sometimes struggles to be any one of those things sometimes, right? To be a little joyful, a little innovative is something worth celebrating, I think, nowadays.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like, how do you... It's hard to compete, dude. I mean, you're competing with the 3-second dopamine drips or whatever from TikTok and whatever else, short form content. That's hard.
That's what those dice rolls do, though, man. That's what those dice rolls. That's your 3-second dopamine right there. Boom. That's right. The dice roll.
That's true. But, there's something to be said on that moment. I think Callie had some eloquent words to say about that, is the idea of a little bit of a delayed gratification. There's something in that collected, co-created story element of a TTRPG, the analog old school element of that especially. There's something about that I think has a really interesting power, and it's what's old is new again kind of thing. Like the idea of, okay, class, today we're actually going to get around a table or pull our desks together and look at each other. We're gonna like do some things, talking to each other face to face. It's like, what? And I say that with love, because I totally get and have grace for the fact that the pandemic, I mean, in education, it's just an amazing punch gut to what it did to us as educators, as a society. And that doesn't even count all the lives lost and everything else. But we're really pulling out of that and really trying to recover from the fact of a lot of isolation, a lot of trauma, in a world where everything was safe. And you wouldn't think that's something. This is a true story, by the way, just as a point of fact about that. I'm a huge Stephen King fan. And do you know, I had never read The Stand. Never. In all my years. I'd read 1 million, Dark Tower, the whole series, all the books. Do you know when I decided to start reading The Stand?
Yeah. The worst possible time.
Late February 2020. And I can laugh about it now. But I remember on March 20th, and I was like 3 or 4 chapters in, and I say this with full transparency and vulnerability. I was so traumatized, I had to put the book down. It was just too close to home, right? I still haven't read The Stand. I've watched the TV movies and all the things, but that's one I probably will never pick back up again. And yeah, that's what the pandemic is and was. And for a lot of those kids, it's that bubble that they're riding out still, even though it's been in some cases years past, of course, and they may have been really young. But man, the high schoolers that you're seeing, Lee, for example, like that's not a distant memory. It wasn't like they were 2 when the pandemic happened. Like that's a pretty vivid memory in middle school to them. So yeah.
We like to say is my experience, educators and people, I guess, just like to say kids don't want to talk to each other. That's just not true. I don't think that's true. Not from my experience. They want to socially interact. They just don't know how to. And so this is also teaching them how to work together and how to talk to each other. I really think that this would not have gone as well for my students if I was like, push a button to roll a die. I know it sounds weird, but I think the analog idea of rolling a die, they all had physical dice. Everyone had their own little die.
Yeah.
And that was different for them. And so I guess it made it a little more important to them because they do this all day, dude. So how often do they roll a dice?
Absolutely. You know? That's so true.
And that's something we talk about all the time. Anytime we talk about role-playing games, and we did our second episode of the podcast ever was about tabletop role-playing games and the history of that. And we talked about TSR and Gary Gygax and all that. Mm-hmm. And that's cool. That's the history of it's cool, where they came from, where they're going, all that stuff, the different types. It's all neat. But at the end of the day, it's like you said, this is a cooperative storytelling situation. That's what we're doing. We're getting together to create a narrative. Win, lose, or draw. This is a social thing, right, at its heart. And the social aspect of it, what you learn from that and what you get from that in interpersonal relationships, what you get from that interpersonal interactions, and how it can allow people, and we talked about this at the PD, how tabletop role-playing games and just the idea of being someone else for a moment, even if it's brief, if it's long form, whatever have you, can let someone who otherwise wouldn't in their own skin behave in a certain way, behave in that way. You know, someone who wasn't talkative, well, maybe I'm not talkative. Like Josh in real life isn't talkative. This is a pretend scenario, everybody. We all know who I am. You know, Josh in real life is not talkative. I'm reclusive, but the bard Josh is playing, you know, I've seen bards, the Krungler, you know, whatever. But the bard that I'm playing, maybe he's confident, he's expressive. He can, you know, he is pulling off of these tropes that I've seen, and I'm building a character that then, even though I can't put myself in that skin, I can put this character in that skin, and I know how this character's going to do. And then I can behave like that, and you're getting that out of people. And that's what I found when the little bit I did, because I did some of this I did a STEM course for school age kids when I worked at a daycare, and I did some D&D there with my kids. And what I found was and again, just like you said, it was nothing as in depth as what you guys are doing. It was just like, we got a little scenario, let's roll some dice and have some fun. But I found my kids, even my more reclusive kids, were getting into it because they were seeing the dice roll, and it was this, you know, moment of tension, and then build and release when you see what the dice hits to. And then they were talking, and all my kids were interacting with each other. Oh, we need to do this, we need to do that, and it was just so great. It's so amazing to see that social aspect of it build and flourish, and to come from this, even if they're not learning, you know, exactly what the War of the Roses is at the time. They're learning how to be better social animals. Right.
Yeah, that's definitely something in the book that I spend some time establishing and reiterating, is that there are really 3 big chunks that I think of as far as learning in a much general sense, in a capital L sense of learning, which is there's academics, which could be content, but also all those academic standards. And as teachers, you know, that's what we're supposed to teach them, right? But in addition to that, there's the social emotional learning aspects of it, that self-regulation, self-management, decision-making ability, all of those things that tabletop role-playing games help with. And last but not least is those lifelong skills. I call them durable skills. Being an effective communicator, being a predictive collaborator, all of those things that um, they're going to have to know and be able to do for years. And the academic situation gives them an opportunity to definitely put that in perspective or apply, those knowledge. But I love what you actually said, Josh, because I think this is also where we're changing in education. I think the wheel is turning. We live in a world really that 20 years ago when Google came online and people started having those little plastic devices, those things called phones shoved in their pocket. I can Google the War of the Roses, right? Like if I need to know that fact, unless I'm on Jeopardy and I'm hitting a buzzer, there's nothing that can't give me a few seconds to be like, War of the Roses. Yeah, what year was that? Oh yeah, it was 8. You know what I mean? That information is becoming not as valuable and for the sake of a test, almost pointless versus why did the War of the Roses happen and the deeper thinking about that. Now, there you have something. We may be talking about the War of the Roses and the facts of the War of the Roses, fine, but it's more important for me as a human to understand the why behind the conflict. How can we avoid a War of the Roses, etc. How does the War of the Roses connect to me or my life? That kind of big stuff is what I hope and I am seeing as part of the change in education. Because if it's a fact, it's Googleable, and we live in a world where AI is starting to write and stuff. So if it's just like an email of like, hi, can you send me 3 more pounds of chicken? Like the AI is starting to do that. So even poems and songs. So the human element of it is shifting, but I don't think diminishing. It's just, changing the fact of what does it mean to be in school? What do we need to teach in school?
Yeah. I think, is there anything else you would like to mention about the book or about, your career getting into, the heavier stuff, or would you want to move into some quick fire, neat little questions about what you like about tabletop RPGs?
I would love to do the quick fire. I'll just show the cover of the book here really quick. This is the lovely tabletop role-playing games in the classroom. If you go to kyedrpg.com and go to the books page, you can see several links from direct to the publisher to probably your favorite online bookseller, but also some suggestion of ways that you could go to an independent bookstore, which I'm all about as well. So I definitely, and for more information about the book, another opportunity is going to the website and going to that page. So, all right, now that I've done the sales pitch part, I would absolutely love to do quick fire questions to end the night.
And just to
have one.
Oh, we'll go real quick. So just to mention the sales pitch thing,
Yes.
The podcast is not to sell you Adam's book. We think you should, if you're an educator, you should buy Adam's book and read Adam's book. But that's not, Adam didn't approach us and be like, hey, I'm trying to bump this book, right? There's value to this. Lee has implemented it. I mean, if there's anybody here that's we're going to tell you the truth, right? It's fun. It's good. It's a great thing.
You're honest people, yes.
Well, we try to be.
That was a shake of the head, friends, for those that are listening to this as an audio cast. Yeah.
But it's just great. We just think what you're doing is great, Adam. We thank you for doing it. I know as a father.
Well, thank you all for doing for all the things you do with Hills Have Nerds and Lee. The proof is in the pudding. If I love that you were skeptical, I want skepticism. The fact that you said, "Let me try this out," you got excited to try it out. The story you shared, that's what this is all about.
All right, so we want to do what we do with our guests sometimes. What we have done with our guests that we spotlight is we do a little bit of quick fire at the end. And then not necessarily quick fire. You can be as verbose or as brief as you want to with these. But we're going to do some questions. I have some here. Lee, you said you had one. We just want to get to know you as a tabletop role player through here. So, Lee, what's your question?
What's your YouTube channel? I'm trying to find it.
There you go. What's your YouTube
What's the
channel?
YouTube channel?
Oh, my YouTube. Sorry, that was the question. Sorry.
That was,
a lot of my social media handles prior to KY at RPG was Watson EdTech. So if you go to YouTube and you look up Watson EdTech, I have a blog called EdTech Elixirs. That's watsonedtech.blogspot.com. So Watson EdTech, put that in your Google and you'll probably come find me in a lot of different places in social media.
But we're going to have links. We'll have links to all Adam's social media stuff in the show notes below in the description. All that. Check them out. Do that. And we'll get a full list here in a minute. But let's go through this. All right. So, Adam, rules as written or rule of cool?
A rule of cool trumps, but I think that you have to know the rules to break them. So there's one before the other. I think you have to understand the rules before you can go cool.
Okay.
Agreed.
Do you prefer a session 0, or do you want to just jump right in? Like, what do you like?
Session 0, and as an old school player, I understood the reason, but I was a little skeptical until the game group that I was in, that I've been playing with for a couple of years now. We had a session 0, and it's like it all clicked. When I did one, I was like, this is why you need to have it, to establish what do you all like, what are you looking for, and some safety measures and things like that. Are there any aspects or things you don't want to go into? Those are all very fair questions if you're going to play a game of especially for a long period of time. So I'm about session 0 now.
Okay. Theater of the mind, or do you prefer something physical in front of you? You want a theater of the mind or battle maps? What do you like?
Can I just say I cannot paint a miniature worth my life, but I love battle maps. I love the tactile nature of it. And if someone paints them, I love the artistry of people that can. So I enjoy the tactical nature of that. We can get theater of the mind here and there too, and I can. But yeah, give me the grid, give me the 5-foot square.
Okay. Do you want your DM when you DM, if you do, or do you when you play with a DM, do you prefer them to have a screen where their roles are hidden, or do you want everything to be out in the open?
I respect a hidden role because I want to believe that if the DM is trusting the story and it's about elevating the players and their adventure and their story, then I won't say that they have to fudge it. I don't want them to feel like they have to nerf it for me, but if they have to hide the roles so that, sometimes things break, or sometimes, listen, we need a little smack on the hand. I'll accept it if the story's served.
And feel free to talk about anything that you're currently playing in as we go through this stuff. I want to hear what games you're playing, if you have current campaigns happening, all that stuff.
D&D 5th edition is the main game that I'm as a player of right now.
Okay. So in that D&D 5th edition game, are you a term that our people love is murder hobo? Are you a group of murder hobos, or are you actually trying to be beneficial to society?
I think it depends on the episode or the session of the day. I think we have our moments, and then it's time to pull out the swords. Roll some dice.
So,
My character tends to be a little hair triggery, so that kind of fits his character to be like, enough of this talk.
So you're murder hoboing.
A little sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Well, that answers this next question: was do you prefer a support class or like a damage focused, or a tank? Tank or heals or control or damage focus?
You know what? I'm maturing. I used to be scared of like spellcasters and things like that. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of meeting in the middle. Like my character that was a rogue recently in the session in the game I'm playing got captured, which was a lovely little Han Solo moment. Like the big bad came in and snatched the character. So for a time, as we're, what happened to Elonius and the big bad, while that's happening for a period of time, I talked to the DM and I'm going to be a new character, and it's a ranger, which has some spells. And that, if you knew me, you would know that that's a growth area for me. Like, ooh, I might actually have some spells I might cast. So I'm working my way slowly to like a druid or something. I'll go real crazy at some point. Yeah.
So when you play, do you do a voice for your character, or do you not? You doing a voice or not when you roleplay?
I do a little bit. I don't try to go to like way weird accent. I probably couldn't sustain it. Is what I would fear. Okay. But a gravelly voice, or do a little Batman voice sometimes, or whatever it is. Yeah, I try to lean a little bit that it's a touch where you can tell where Adam's talking and the character's talking.
Is that your character right now? Is that the gravelly like voice?
That's the Elonius that just got kidnapped. My current character that I just got, that I'm gonna. This ranger is a tabaxi, kind of a curmudgeonly cat. So I'm trying to figure out what that's going to sound like.
Okay. Nice. Can you just for one listener, and I'm not going to name him out because they'll get this. Can you give me, in your little Batman voice you just did, where's Rachel? Can you?
Like shouting it angry?
Yeah.
Okay. Where's Rachel?
Perfect. That's glorious. I loved it. All right. So we're just a few more here. That's good. It was that is
I thought when you start doing sound bites like
no, that's pure self-indulgence.
Dry cleaning.
Because one person that we know, Lee and I, mutual friend Lee, you may not even know the story. has a very traumatizing experience with some players at the table and them going through that.
I think I was involved in that campaign.
You very well may have been, I think.
I think I was.
Yeah. So
It was
go ahead.
understandably traumatizing.
Yeah. So do you prefer your character when you're playing? Would you prefer? And I think we already know the answer to this. But you prefer to make a charisma check? You want to talk your way out of something, or stealth check? Do you want to try to avoid something, or a roll initiative? Or your charisma check, a stealth check, or roll initiative guy? And I think we know.
I'd probably say the stealth, especially I
Really?
was very roguey.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, because if I can do an ambush or a sneak attack, that's delightful. But, we'll try to sneak first. There's only so many hit points you have after all.
All right. So, do you prefer to fail forward in a campaign, or do you want your failure to have consequences? Like me messing this up can absolutely derail us.
I guess fail forward. I recognize that you have to have a sense of consequences and that your character could perish. I think if you live in a world where it's like your character never has a chance of dying. Also, if you make horrible choices, I think there's a certain point where those choices should catch up with you. And sometimes, life is just a horrible roll the dice or your death saves fail. So I think there's character building in many aspects of that phrase by having that. But fail forward is probably, the idea that this is just probably in the overall arc of a story, just a complication that makes it fun. I love the Spielbergian movie experience where it's like, I can see Steven Spielberg making this, the Raiders of the Lost Ark chase, it's like, and then the guy pulls out his sword, and then it's like, and then he's in Marion's in 3 different cases. Like the idea of that, again, an 80s kid, but I love that idea of what can you do in that in a role-playing game experience where it's like, oh no, and then that happened, but it's all in the idea of just building the fun and building so that when you finally quote unquote win, it feels like you've, it has value.
All right. Couple more, and then we're gonna let you out of here. Let you out of the dungeon. All right. So are you a dice goblin? Would you consider yourself a dice goblin? Okay. How many sets of dice do you
period,
own?
Full stop. Let's see, full sets. I still have some polyhedral dice from my 80s experience where you had the white crayon and you had to color them in, the wax. That's how old some of my dice is.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know numbers, but I would say, in the dozens, which I know is probably a mild dice goblin, but I got my first nice metal set just a few months ago, and that's probably the start of a bad scene of me spending too much money.
What do you think about the metal versus the resin?
There's some heft in it, I don't know what it is or why I would change the experience of rolling it versus something lighter, but it feels like when I'm about to roll, it feels like it's literally more weighty, right? Like
no.
I better be ready to see what happens when I weigh it and it clinks down. Makes a nice thud,
What is your favorite setting to role play in?
I've enjoyed a lot of fantasy, but I will tell you, fantasy themed games, but I will tell you that I would like in the near future to maybe try some more science fiction kind of things, which may be outside of D&D, obviously. So, whether it's firing up those old Star Frontier tabletop role-playing games or trying out Alien, Free League has that, and Blade Runner, 2 games I own, but I haven't played. I haven't ever played Pathfinder, but I will say that Starfinder 2nd edition, I've heard lots of good things, and that's something that I might consider if someone's kind enough to give me a learn to play kind of session on it. So yeah, science fiction is something that I would like to try just for a change of pace outside of fantasy. But fantasy is probably my default for a lot of different reasons, and D&D probably will always have that soft spot in my heart.
So when you DM, do you DM fairly often?
Here and there, but it's been one-shots. That's another thing in the near future. It'd be interesting to see if maybe I could do something on a more sustained level. We'll see. But it's fun when I've done some one-shots. And again, it took confidence, to bring in a corresponding educational thing. Like when I hadn't played D&D in literally almost 40 years, right? And then this DM said, hey, come join our group. And I did. that meant a lot because I really needed to be able to play and feel like as a player, it's like, okay, I kind of understand the basics of the rules. And that goes back to one of your first questions. Like now I know that where rules are important and where it's like, just make a call for the sake of the story and let's move on, rule of cool. But I had to learn the rules first and do it as a player to feel like I could. For those that have like DM'd and maybe you've never done anything but DM because the circumstances are forever DM, like, I mean, hats off to you. Because first off, we love you for that. All you forever DMs out there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right? I mean, it's like that's the first start. Like, you might find a handful of friends willing to play, but who's going to DM? And that might be the question that derails it, right?
Who's going to herd these cats?
Yeah. Yep. So anyway.
All right.
So I hope to do some more DMing. Let's see.
Awesome. I highly suggest it. It's very rewarding, especially when you get to, hurt your friends. It's fantastic.
But hurt them lovingly, yes.
Whatever. Whatever. Sure, I guess. Let's whatever.
Yes, that's right.
All right.
It sticks.
These are going to be some quick fire ones. We're going to finish out with these and then we'll close out. We've gone an hour and 40. This has been amazing. Thank you so much, Adam, for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Would you rather roll a nat 1 and experience what comes out of that, or a nat 20?
I'm going to say, I'm sorry, nat 20. I should make nat 1 and make it a fun experience, but there's something palpable of rolling a nat 20 in your life. I love it.
All right, you got to dive into one: mimic or a gelatinous cube.
Gelatinous cube. I'm going to go with the cube. I've always thought it'd be fun to have a character that has a pet gelatinous cube. Like it's only like a foot by foot by foot. I don't know how that would work. I don't know how a leash would even work.
There is an archetype.
It just kind of slithers along.
There's an archetype of alchemist in Pathfinder that throws slimes in their bombs, and
that's kind of amazing.
Fantastic. They bottle them and throw them, and once they hit, they're not controlled. It's just whatever they hit, they go after. It's amazing. All right.
Okay.
Are you a magic item hoarder? Like, do you save your stuff just in case I need it, or are you chugging that potion the second you're going into combat? Like, you find it, I'm finding it, putting it in my mouth.
I can't. I'm trying to think if I've even gone 15 minutes without probably taking one of those. So it's probably one that they haven't hoarded very long. I will say that I'm one of those people as a player and probably as a DM that either you have bag of holdings upon bag of holdings or just waive the encumbrance rules. Because this goes back to, I mentioned Dan and Tom earlier. It's an important antidote, but it reminds me of being careful about rules as written. He was talking about, Tom was talking about an early time of playing D&D where they got 2 minutes into the game and then they came up on a chest of some stuff, and for like 20 minutes they started arguing about weights and then the strength checks, and it was like, wow, like
it's dumb.
I didn't really, just
it's dumb. It's dumb. I'm a loud objector to encumbrance rules in these games, unless everybody at the table's cool with it and they want to go. But if you have one person that's like no, then I think they bog everything down. But all right,
yeah.
Would you rather have a talking sword or haunted armor? Talking
sword. Talking lightsaber. How about that?
Okay, nice. Even more specific. All right, are you going to let the big bad evil guy monologue, or it's on? We ain't got time for this.
I like a good monologue. There's some fun in that. Whether you're on the receiving end of hearing it when it's executed well, or being the DM and having a chance. Yeah. And that goes back to my comic book days. I often thought about when you make that jump to movies, that's one of the hardest jumps. Forget the spandex. It's the fact that you had 4 panels of this guy monologuing, right? And it's perfect. It works wonderfully when Stan Lee does it on a comic book page. And then you realize if you literally did that, it does look like a bunch of people are staring around like, what the, come on, man. So,
go? Yeah.
But for the monologue, yeah, let's let the man speak, or the woman speak, or the gelatinous cube speak, or whatever.
All right. Do you prefer pulling your quests from the tavern quest board, or do you want a stranger to burst in dramatically and bestow an epic quest on your team?
Give me a stranger. Strangers means humans. Humans mean good stories and an NPC I can interact with. That's preferred.
All right. And our final question, Are you a fan of splitting the party?
No, not in life and not in tabletop role-playing games. You've got to stick together.
Well, that is
Also,
unfortunate, Adam, because we have to split. We are
have to
having.
split the party.
No, you were about to say something else. What was it you were going to say?
No,
My chair is
all
sinking on me. If people see me just slowly going down, it's messed
the
up.
hydraulic fluid
Yeah,
is
it's going bad.
Pneumatic. No, I was just going to say, also, that's probably me having too much empathy for my DM. Like, I realize, and I've seen it, and I've even had to do it once or twice, where it's like when two people go here and two people go there, that goes back to managing a classroom. It's like, oh man, all right, well, you two, all right, well, you can't hear this. All right, so you two this. All right, well, wait a second. All right, you two, what are you going to do? Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot. Keep them together.
All right. Well, like I said, unfortunately, we are having to split our party. We've gone on for a while. So as we leave, Adam, thank you again so much for being on here, for inviting us to the PD, for hanging out and sharing all this wonderful knowledge you have. So plug your book. Where can people find you? Any last thing you want to say? Go for it.
All right. Well, again, you got tabletop role-playing games in the classroom, infusing gameplay into K-12 instruction. McFarland is the publisher. You can find out all the links to all the different places, but basically anywhere where online books are sold. But you can go to kyedrpg.com. That's the Kentucky Educators for Role-Playing Games website. So kyedrpg.com. KYEdRPG is also the social media handle, whether it's Blue Sky or X or Instagram, even on Facebook. You can also find me at Watson EdTech, whether that's my YouTube channel or, again, several different social media handle sites. And last thing I'll say is probably adamwatson.org, especially if you're interested in more of the education stuff. That's where my full education bio, different things that I've published over the years as an educator and so on, is also on that site. So adamwatson.org.
All right. Again, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on, Adam. It's been
Thank
great.
you. It's been a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you for having me.
Lee, where can the good people find you?
Pixel Bro Lee on YouTube would be the most prominent place to find me. If you just search Pixel space Bro space Lee, I'll show up in some capacity, hopefully. So I talk about video games mostly, and it's actually, funny enough, RPGs. I talk about old RPGs. So I'd be happy to have you pop in.
All right. And for me, Josh, here at the Hills Have Nerds, if you want to get in on the conversation, if you want to talk to the nerds in the hills, we want to know what you think. We want to know what you thought about the conversation here. We want to hear your input on it. Have you used any of Adam's methods in your classroom? Have you ever implemented TTRPGs in the classroom? Are you a teacher? Are you not a teacher? I don't care. You can email us anyway. Email us at hillshavenerds@gmail.com. That's hillshavenerds@gmail.com. There is no the. You can find us on Facebook. Come on our Facebook. Just search Hills Have Nerds or the Hills Have Nerds there. We have a Discord. Come inside our Discord. You'll find links to that in the show notes. We're having all kinds of nerdy conversations all the time there. You can talk about current episodes, what you're doing, what you're watching, what you're playing, what you're reading. We want to know about it. We want to talk about all that nerdy stuff with you. If you like the Hills Have Nerds, the best thing you can do for us is tell somebody about us. If you're having a nerdy conversation with some friends, say, hey, I know some other idiots who like this stuff. Let me tell you about these nerdy boys from Kentucky. And tell somebody about the Hills Have Nerds. The word of mouth is our strongest ally. Leave us a like, leave us a share, leave us a comment, a review. Wherever you can leave reviews does a world of wonders for us. And if you are so moved by the wonderful words you have heard here today and the boys in the hills, you can visit us on Ko-Fi to donate. Every dime goes to the podcast. You get some membership rewards there. We greatly appreciate it. We want to give a shout out to our Ko-Fi contributors who make the podcast possible. Nick, La Rosa, and Brittany Johnston, thank you so much for being our kinfolk and helping us here in the hills. And with that, I believe we are out. May all your rolls be 20s and all your hits be crits. Thank you guys, and have a great night.